When you go silent, you don't just disappear from her life, you disappear from her control. And that's where the regret begins. At first, she might act like it doesn't bother her. She might even convince herself that she's over it. But silence is not something the heart can easily ignore, especially when it comes from someone who once cared deeply. The absence of your voice, your attention, your energy starts echoing louder than anything you could ever say. That silence becomes a mirror she can't avoid, one that forces her to face the reality of what she did and what she lost. The longer you stay quiet, the stronger the emotional distance grows. It creates a kind of tension that words can't break. She begins to feel the weight of your absence in moments she least expects. Late at night when she's scrolling through old pictures, during random songs that remind her of you, or in quiet moments when life feels too still. It's in those small spaces of silence that regret starts to build, because silence gives her time to think, and thinking is what she fears most. She begins to wonder why you haven't reached out, why you're not chasing, why you're not reacting the way she expected. That confusion slowly turns into realization that maybe she pushed away someone who truly cared. What makes silence so powerful is that it doesn't beg for attention, it demands reflection. You're not arguing, not proving, not explaining. You're simply not available anymore. That absence hits differently because it shows her something words never could. You've changed. You're no longer the man she could manipulate emotionally, no longer the one who needed her to feel whole. You found something stronger, self-respect. And that's what shifts the energy completely. At first, she might test you. Maybe she'll post something to get your reaction. Maybe she'll try to trigger you indirectly just to see if you still care. But your silence, steady, unshaken, and peaceful, tells her everything she needs to know. It tells her that she no longer has access to your emotions. It tells her that you've moved beyond her validation. And that's what stings the most. Because once she realizes she can no longer affect you, she starts missing the power she had over you. The feeling of being desired, needed, and in control. Every day that passes in silence deepens her thoughts. The longer you stay quiet, the more she replays her actions. She starts to see the mistakes she made, the things she said, the moments she took for granted. And while she's lost in those memories, you're at peace, moving forward, stronger than before. That's the power of silence. It doesn't punish her, it teaches her. It teaches her the cost of losing a man who learned to choose his peace over her attention. When you go silent, something strange happens inside her mind. Her thoughts begin to replay the past like a movie she can't turn off. Every moment you shared, every word you said, every time you showed up for her when no one else did, starts to surface again. She remembers how consistent you were, how deeply you cared, and how easily she took that energy for granted. At first, she doesn't want to admit it. She tries to distract herself, tries to stay busy, maybe even seeks attention elsewhere, just to fill the emptiness that silence creates. But the mind doesn't forget peace, and it doesn't forget presence. Sooner or later, her heart begins to remember the version of you that was once all hers, the one who was emotionally available, patient, and real. The silence you create becomes a trigger for her memory. Without your attention feeding her ego, her mind starts feeding on the past. She begins to relive the moments where you showed her unconditional love, where you listened, where you forgave, where you made her feel like she mattered. And now that energy is gone. It's like a song that used to play every day and suddenly stops. The silence after the music is deafening. She realizes that what she thought was ordinary was actually rare. The things you did so naturally, checking up on her, being there when she was down, supporting her dreams, those gestures start to look different when they're gone. As more time passes, her emotions start shifting from pride to reflection. The longer you remain silent, the clearer it becomes to her that your absence has changed something. It's no longer about missing you. It's about realizing what kind of man she lost, the one who brought stability, the one who understood her without words, the one who would have done anything for her. Now she's surrounded by noise, people, distractions, temporary comfort, but none of it gives her the peace your presence once did. That's when she begins to understand that not all love feels the same. Some love stays loud, but the one she lost was quiet, steady, and pure. She starts remembering the times she dismissed your effort, the moments she ignored your care, and the way she thought you'd always be there waiting. But silence changes that illusion. It shows her that even the kindest hearts eventually stop giving when they're no longer appreciated. Every day that you don't call or text becomes a reminder that you've accepted what she couldn't, that it's over, and that you've moved on with grace. In that quiet space, her heart begins to ache, not because she lost someone, but because she finally understands the value of what she let slip away. Your silence becomes the sound of her regret, and your absence becomes the lesson she can never forget. When you go silent, you remove the one thing she used to rely on the most, your reaction. Before, she knew exactly what to do to get under your skin. She could say something, post something, or pull away just to see how much you'd chase, how fast you'd respond, or how emotional you'd get. That reaction gave her power. It reminded her that she still had your attention, that no matter how much she pushed you away, you'd always come back. But when that pattern breaks, when your silence replaces reaction, it changes everything. It creates confusion in her mind because now she's not sure what to do or how to feel. The man who once responded to every little thing she did has now disappeared into his own calm world. That loss of emotional control hits her harder than she ever expected. Your silence becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability creates anxiety. She starts wondering what you're thinking, what you're doing, and most importantly, if you still care. She can't read you anymore, and that lack of control eats at her ego. Because deep down, it's not that she misses the relationship, yet she misses the power she had over you. She misses being able to affect your emotions, to make you react, to feel important through your attention. Now she's left questioning whether she ever truly had that control in the first place, or if she only had it because you allowed it. That thought unsettles her because it shifts the entire dynamic. You see, silence flips the script. Before, she was the one dictating the pace, when to talk, when to pull back, when to reconnect. But now you've taken that control away without saying a word. You didn't argue, you didn't explain, you simply stopped engaging. And in doing so, you forced her to deal with herself. That's what silence does. It turns the mirror back on her. She starts noticing how empty her attempts for validation feel when you're not there to respond. Every post, every story, every subtle attempt to get your attention feels pointless because your energy is no longer tied to hers. With time, this emotional disruption turns into reflection. She begins to remember the times you were there no matter what. The comfort of knowing she could always reach out and you'd respond. Now that security is gone, and she realizes it wasn't your words that gave her that comfort, it was your presence. Your silence exposes her emotional dependency. It forces her to see that her sense of power was built on your emotional reactions, not on real connection. The more you stay silent, the more she begins to lose that illusion of control. And when control fades, regret steps in. Because in losing the ability to affect you, she loses her emotional leverage. And when that happens, she doesn't just regret what she did, she regrets underestimating the strength of a man who learned to master his silence. Silence is not just an absence of words, it's an emotional mirror that reflects everything back at her. When you stop talking, stop explaining, stop defending yourself, she's left alone with the echo of her own actions. And that's where the real weight of regret begins to grow. Because when there's no argument, no tension, no emotional chase, all that's left is stillness. And stillness forces her to face the truth. She starts replaying the last moments you had together, every word she said, every time she pushed you away or ignored your effort. The things she brushed off in the heat of the moment now replay in her mind with brutal clarity. That silence becomes her punishment. Not because you intended it to be, but because it gives her space to hear herself. And sometimes that's louder than any response you could have given. At first, she might think she's fine. She tells herself she made the right choice, that she's free, that life feels lighter. But as the days pass, she starts to feel that silence pressing down. She realizes that she doesn't have your reassurance anymore, your texts that made her feel important, or your energy that used to calm her emotions. The longer you remain silent, the more she begins to notice that her own world feels quieter too, but not in a peaceful way, in a hollow way. The absence of your presence becomes a mirror of what she did wrong. And as much as she tries to distract herself, that quiet reflection always returns. When there's no noise between you, her mind fills in the blanks. That's what silence does. It forces her imagination to take over. She starts to wonder what you're thinking, who you're with, how you feel, and most of all, if you've already moved on. Each unanswered question becomes a reminder that she no longer has access to you. And that realization stings because in your silence, she doesn't just lose a conversation. She loses the ability to control how you see her. And for someone who once held emotional power, it's a hard truth to swallow. Your silence becomes the lesson she never expected to learn. It shows her how actions have consequences, how losing a good person doesn't always happen with drama. Sometimes it happens quietly, permanently. The mirror of silence doesn't lie. It shows her the reality of how she treated you, what she said, and how she made you feel. And when she looks into that reflection long enough, she begins to see the real reason for her regret, not because you left, but because she realizes you're never coming back the same. That's the power of silence. It doesn't need to prove a point. It simply lets the truth echo until she can't ignore it anymore. As time passes, your silence starts to shift from confusion to clarity in her mind. At first, she couldn't understand why you stopped reaching out, why you didn't chase, why you didn't argue or try to prove your worth. But as the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, something inside her begins to change. She starts realizing that your silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was peace. It was a quiet declaration that said, I don't need to fight for someone who doesn't value me. And that realization cuts deeper than any words ever could, because now she sees what real self-respect looks like, and it reminds her of what she lost. While she's trying to convince herself she made the right decision, she sees you living calmly, without drama, without bitterness. She notices that you're not reacting, not posting things to get her attention, not falling apart like she thought you would. Instead, you're focused, rebuilding your life, smiling again. And that's when the regret really starts to sink in. She begins to understand that your silence wasn't about ignoring her, it was about choosing yourself. And in that quiet choice, you showed her something powerful, that you can walk away and still find peace. Silence has a strange way of shifting the balance of power. Before, she may have felt in control, confident that you'd always come back, always reach out, always be available. But when you stay silent long enough, that control starts to fade. She begins to question her worth in your eyes, wondering if you've already replaced her, if you've forgotten her, or if she even mattered at all. That uncertainty burns deeper than rejection because it forces her to face the one thing she tried to avoid, the possibility that you truly let go. Every photo you post, every small sign of your happiness, every quiet move forward without her starts to speak volumes. She compares it to her own emotional chaos, her mixed feelings, and her growing emptiness. She thought silence would make her feel powerful, but now it makes her feel invisible. She realizes you're no longer part of her story, and worse, she's no longer part of yours. That truth is what finally humbles her. The longer your silence lasts, the louder it becomes in her mind. She begins to understand that not every goodbye comes with words. Some goodbyes are quiet, calm, steady, and final. That's when she starts to feel the true weight of losing someone who actually cared, someone who had every reason to chase but chose self-respect instead. Your silence didn't just show her that you're strong. It reminded her what real value looks like. Because when you stop explaining yourself, stop proving your worth, and simply walk away in peace, she starts to see the difference between a man who needs her and a man who knows his worth. And that's when regret truly hits her. When your silence stretches long enough, it starts doing something that no amount of words ever could. It creates contrast. She begins to see the difference between you and every other guy she's known. The ones who begged, who chased, who folded under pressure, and then you, calm, collected, unbothered, and focused on yourself. That contrast is what triggers deep regret, because she finally understands that what made you different wasn't your love, but your discipline. You didn't try to win her back through attention, you did it through silence. And now, while she's lost in her own confusion, your peace becomes the loudest message she's ever heard. Silence, over time, becomes its own form of attraction. It forces her to look inward, to question herself, to replay every word, every action, every decision that led to this distance. She remembers your tone, your patience, your efforts, and slowly begins to realize how much you carry the connection without even saying a word. And when that realization hits, it's not just regret, it's respect. The same silence she thought was indifference now feels like control. It shows her that your emotions don't control you, you control them. And that quiet confidence becomes something she can't ignore. She may try to distract herself, talk to others, convince herself she's moved on. But no matter what, your silence keeps echoing in the back of her mind. Because it's not just the absence of communication, it's the absence of validation. She doesn't know what you think anymore, what you feel, or whether she still holds a place in your heart. That uncertainty drives her crazy because control is what she once had. And now you've taken it back without saying a single thing. Because you didn't argue, you didn't defend yourself, you simply let time do the talking. And that, more than anything, makes her realize she lost someone who had mastered emotional control. She begins to see your silence as strength, your absence as confidence, and your distance as power. And it's that shift in perspective that makes her start chasing the closure she thought she didn't need. She may reach out subtly through a story view, a random text, or even mutual friends, just to see if she still matters. But by then, you've already detached, already healed, already moved forward. That's when she understands silence doesn't just make her regret what she did. It makes her see who you become. You've transformed that pain into purpose, that heartbreak into peace. You no longer need her validation to feel valuable. Your silence taught her, and maybe even yourself, that real strength doesn't need to be proven, it's felt. And when she finally realizes that your silence was never about ignoring her, but about choosing yourself, that's when her regret turns into reflection. Because the truth is, silence isn't just a reaction, it's evolution.